The fluorescent lights of the diner hummed, casting a pale, unforgiving glow on the worn countertop. Lily's hand, calloused from a lifetime of scrubbing and polishing, trembled almost imperceptibly as she clutched the crisp $5 bill. It was her last, a solitary beacon against the encroaching darkness of her financial reality. Each wrinkle in the faded green paper felt like a weighty decision, a silent debate playing out in the quiet hum of the restaurant. Her eyes, shadowed with fatigue, darted instinctively toward the young waiter, then flickered to the figure seated at the adjacent table, a man cloaked in an aura of quiet observation, his gaze unnervingly steady. The tension in the air was thick, a silent testament to the invisible threads of fate beginning to intertwine. Lily, a diligent and kind-hearted young woman navigating the treacherous currents of her early 20s, called a modest, cramped apartment in a bustling American city her home. It was a space she shared with her ailing mother, a woman whose fading health was a constant, gnawing worry. Every morning, before the city truly woke, Lily was already on her feet, pulling on her uniform, ready to face another arduous day as a maid. Her life was a relentless cycle of scrubbing, dusting, and polishing, each task a desperate attempt to stitch together enough to keep their fragile existence from unraveling. Her father, a man whose memory was now a bittersweet echo, had passed years ago, leaving them with little more than memories and a mountain of unpaid bills. The world, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor, continually piling on burdens even when she thought she could bear no more. Tonight was no different. The relentless grind had left her physically and emotionally drained. She had just finished an oppressively long shift, her muscles aching, her spirit weary. All she craved was a moment of peace, a small meal to replenish her depleted energy, a brief respite from the unending struggle. As she reached into her purse, her fingers brushed against the sole $5 bill, a stark reminder of her precarious situation. Her mother's medical bills had been mounting for months, a silent, growing menace that threatened to consume them entirely. Just yesterday, a notice had arrived, a cold, formal warning that their eviction was imminent if an unexpected, substantial expense wasn't covered by the end of the week. The weight of that threat pressed down on her, an unbearable burden for shoulders so young. A single plate of greasy fries and a cheap coffee was all she could afford, a meager comfort that felt like a luxury given her current predicament. Yet, even as the warmth of the coffee cup seeped into her cold hands, her internal struggle raged. The $5 represented her last bastion of self-care, a fleeting chance to nourish herself, however modestly. But her selfless nature, a trait honed by years of putting others first, whispered a different truth. She had seen the young waiter, Alex, throughout her meal, his shoulders slumped, his face etched with a weariness that mirrored her own. He, too, looked like someone fighting an invisible battle, struggling to keep his head above water, to use her last $5 on herself, when someone else might need it more, felt like a betrayal of her own deeply ingrained principles. The internal tug-of-war was agonizing, each side presenting a compelling argument that echoed in the quiet corners of her mind. Could she truly prioritize her own fleeting comfort over another's potential need? The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered, as she stared at the crumpled bill, a symbol of hope and despair all at once. Before we dive deeper into Lily's extraordinary journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our heartwarming stories. Lily, her fatigue a heavy cloak after a relentless day of scrubbing floors and polishing surfaces, sought refuge in the familiar comfort of a small, unpretentious diner. The fluorescent lights hummed a weary tune, a stark contrast to the city's vibrant pulse just outside. She found a quiet booth in the corner, a place where she could momentarily disappear. a brief oasis before returning to her modest apartment and the ever-present weight of her mother's medical bills. It was a place for cheap coffee and an even cheaper meal. Her last $5 clutched within her worn purse, a testament to her precarious financial state. Just as she was about to flag down a waiter, her attention was involuntarily drawn to a scene unfolding a few tables away. A young man, perhaps in his early 20s, with an earnest face and slightly disheveled hair, stood patiently as a woman, her voice sharp and condescending, berated him over a minor imperfection in her order. This was Alex, the waiter. Lily had seen him here before, always polite, always hustling. The customer, dressed in an expensive, if garish ensemble, continued her tirade, her words cutting through the diner's ambient noise like a serrated knife. Lily watched, a knot forming in her stomach, memories of similar humiliations in her own line of work resurfacing. The woman finally concluded her performance by tossing a few coins onto the table, barely enough to cover a fraction of the minimum recommended tip, accompanying it with a dismissive wave and a sneering remark about people who couldn't get it right. Alex, his shoulders slumped, merely offered a tight, professional smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Lily saw the flicker of defeat, the quiet humiliation that a service industry worker often learns to mask. She understood that look intimately. It was the same look she wore when a homeowner complained about a missed speck of dust or treated her as if she were invisible. The sting of being undervalued, of having one's effort and dignity systematically eroded by the entitled, was a pain she knew all too well. Her own struggles were immense, a constant battle against forces far greater than she could control. But watching Alex, she felt a profound wave of empathy wash over her. Her own financial predicament, dire as it was, momentarily faded into the background. Here was another human being, clearly trying his best, facing the indignity of a thankless job. She saw the familiar strain of someone living paycheck to paycheck, where every dollar counted, and where a meager tip could mean the difference between a full stomach and an empty one. Her heart ached for him. It was a silent, unacknowledged kinship forged in the crucible of economic hardship and daily struggles. Despite her own hunger pangs and the pressing need for every single cent, a quiet resolve began to form within her. Her last $5. It wasn't much, but to someone like Alex, after an interaction like that, it might just be the smallest glimmer of hope, a tiny affirmation that not everyone was cruel. She took a deep, steadying breath, her fingers instinctively tracing the worn edges of the single $5 bill inside her purse. It felt heavy, imbued with the weight of her sacrifices, the promise of a meal, perhaps even a small comfort for her ailing mother. Yet, the image of Alex's crestfallen face, the way his shoulders sagged, overruled her immediate self-preservation. This wasn't about her hunger tonight. It was about acknowledging another's worth, about a simple act of human kindness in a world that often felt harsh and indifferent. She waited until Alex had cleared the offensive customer's table and was heading back towards the kitchen, his posture still radiating quiet dejection. As he passed her table, Lily caught his eye. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic pronouncement. With a gentle, almost imperceptible movement, she pulled out the crisp $5 bill and placed it carefully on the table, right where he would see it. She didn't say a word, fearful that speaking might shatter the delicate moment, might make it seem like a pity offering. Instead, she offered him a small, genuine smile, a silent message of understanding, of shared humanity. It was a smile that said, "I see you. I know this is hard. You're doing great." Then, before he could fully register the unexpected gratuity, before he could utter a word of thanks or protest, Lily quickly gathered her few belongings and exited the diner, disappearing into the cool night air. She felt a lightness, an unexpected warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling more satisfying than any meal her $5 could have bought. Unbeknownst to Lily, her simple act of generosity had not gone unnoticed. At an adjacent table, partially obscured by a decorative plant, a young man named James had been observing the entire scene. He was a striking figure, impeccably dressed, with an air of quiet sophistication that hinted at a world far removed from the diner's humble setting. James, the scion of a billionaire family, was accustomed to a life of privilege, a world often devoid of genuine emotion and raw, unfiltered human connection. He had watched the rude customer's cruel display with a detached disdain, his gaze then shifting to Lily as she performed her quiet act of kindness. He noted the worn fabric of her coat, the subtle signs of her modest means, and the genuine, almost luminous empathy in her eyes as she looked at the struggling waiter. Her humble appearance only amplified the impact of her selfless gesture. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated altruism, a stark contrast to the calculated transactions and superficial interactions that usually filled his days. His interest, usually reserved for complex business deals and strategic investments, was powerfully piqued. Meanwhile, Alex, still reeling from the previous customer's verbal assault, returned to clear Lily's table. His eyes were downcast, his movements slow. Then he saw it. The $5 bill, lying neatly on the table. He paused, confused. He hadn't even taken her order yet. He looked up, but Lily was already gone, a faint silhouette disappearing through the diner's door. He picked up the bill, his brows furrowing in bewilderment. Then, a sudden dawning realization washed over him. He remembered the brief, encouraging smile from the young woman. He looked at the bill again, his fingers tracing the numerical value, and an overwhelming wave of emotion swelled within him. It wasn't the amount, though every dollar counted. It was the silent understanding, the unexpected kindness from a stranger, especially in the wake of such a demeaning encounter. It was a balm to his bruised spirit, a powerful affirmation that there was still good in the world. As he held the $5 bill, a profound sense of gratitude, mixed with a touch of wonder, settled in his heart. He understood, with a clarity that stung slightly, that this woman, despite her own likely struggles, had given him her very last $5. James, accustomed to a world shimmering with privilege and often a chilling superficiality, found Lily's simple act of kindness profoundly unsettling, yet deeply captivating. His life, a gilded cage of exclusive clubs, private jets, and endless social engagements, rarely offered glimpses of raw, unadulterated human emotion. He was surrounded by people who measured worth in assets, connections, and carefully curated appearances. Genuine altruism, stripped of any discernible self-interest, was a phenomenon almost alien to his experience. He'd witnessed philanthropy, certainly, but those grand gestures were often meticulously publicized, serving as much to polish an image as to alleviate suffering. Lily's silent offering, her last $5 given with a gentle smile and no expectation of recognition, resonated through him like a discordant, yet beautiful, symphony. It wasn't just the monetary value, it was the sacrifice, the stark contrast to his own reality, that held him spellbound. He'd never encountered such purity of intent, such quiet heroism in the face of personal hardship. The image of her slender hand, placing that crumpled bill on the table, refused to dissipate from his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had just witnessed something truly extraordinary, a moment of grace that transcended the mundane bustle of the diner. An irrepressible curiosity, a desire to understand the wellspring of such selflessness, surged within him. He knew instinctively that he couldn't simply let her vanish back into the anonymous tapestry of the city. He needed to know more about this woman who, despite her own struggles, had chosen compassion over comfort. So, driven by an impulse he couldn't quite articulate, James decided to follow her. He did so discreetly, maintaining a careful distance, his luxury car blending into the evening traffic just enough to remain unnoticed. His silent investigation led him to a modest, slightly run-down apartment building nestled in a less affluent part of the city. He watched as she unlocked the door, the faint glow of a single light illuminating her tired but determined profile. His observations over the next few days painted a vivid picture of her life. He saw her leaving early each morning, often before dawn, her shoulders slumping slightly with exhaustion as she carried a worn bag. He learned of her job as a maid, witnessing her enter various upscale homes, invisible and essential, cleaning up after the very people whose lives mirrored his own in their opulence. He saw her return late at night, sometimes carrying groceries, her steps heavy. He overheard snippets of conversation from neighbors, confirming whispers of an ailing mother and mounting medical bills. The sheer weight of her responsibilities, her unwavering dedication to her family, struck him deeply. She was a pillar of strength, sacrificing relentlessly for those she loved, all while carrying the burden with quiet dignity. James found himself in a peculiar quandary. He wanted to help, desperately so, but he was acutely aware of the chasm between their worlds. How could he, a man who had never known want, offer assistance without appearing patronizing, without shattering her proud independence? His initial thoughts gravitated towards grand anonymous gestures. A large sum deposited into her bank account, a fully paid medical bill for her mother. But something held him back. He imagined her confusion, perhaps even her suspicion, at such an unexpected windfall. He knew, intuitively, that the pure nature of her spirit wouldn't appreciate a handout, especially from an unknown source. He yearned for a more personal connection, something that acknowledged her inherent worth, not just her immediate needs. The idea of direct intervention, revealing his true identity and wealth, seemed too abrupt, too jarring. He feared it would create a barrier, not a bridge. He wanted to understand her better, to genuinely connect with the woman behind the selfless act before any revelation. As James continued his quiet vigil, his admiration for Lily only intensified. He watched her navigate challenges with a quiet resilience that left him humbled. He saw her patience with difficult clients, her gentle demeanor, her unwavering work ethic. He observed her small acts of kindness even outside the diner, a brief encouraging word to a struggling street vendor, a comforting smile to a child who had dropped an ice cream. Each observation deepened his respect and fondness. He contrasted her genuine spirit with the often hollow interactions he had in his own social circle, where conversations revolved around status, acquisitions, and superficial gossip. His friends, privileged and often jaded, seemed to lack the very essence of what made Lily so compelling. She possessed a grounded authenticity, an inner fortitude that his world, for all its material comforts, seemed utterly devoid of. He saw in her a vibrant, enduring humanity that he rarely encountered, a stark and beautiful contrast to the gilded superficiality he was so accustomed to. This quiet, unassuming maid was, in his eyes, a beacon of true character, and he knew, with a growing certainty, that he wanted to be a part of her world, even if just from the shadows. James, now fully immersed in the silent observation of Lily's life, understood that direct intervention, while tempting, risked alienating her. He decided upon a more clandestine approach, one that would alleviate her burdens without revealing his hand. He meticulously orchestrated a series of subtle, anonymous acts of kindness, weaving them into the fabric of her existence like a silent guardian angel. The first pressing concern was her looming eviction. Through a complex network of intermediaries, James arranged for her landlord to mysteriously receive the overdue rent payments, carefully routing the funds through several shell companies and accounts to obscure their origin. A check, indistinguishable from any other, would simply appear in the landlord's mail, always just before the deadline. Lily received no notification, no direct contact. She only noticed that the threatening notices ceased arriving, replaced by a puzzling silence. The pressure on her shoulders, though she didn't know why, began to subtly lessen. Her mother's medical bills were another larger mountain. James couldn't simply pay them all at once. A sudden clearing of tens of thousands of dollars would surely raise questions. Instead, he worked with his family's extensive legal and financial contacts to establish a discreet, anonymous charitable fund, ostensibly for families facing medical hardship in her specific zip code. He then ensured that Lily's mother's outstanding balances were incrementally paid down, not in one lump sum, but through a series of smaller, untraceable donations. Each payment was attributed to this fictional charity, which conveniently appeared to be responding to an influx of local cases. Lily, receiving the updated statements showing reduced balances, felt a profound sense of bewilderment. Who was doing this? Why? She discussed it with her mother, who was equally puzzled but deeply relieved. A glimmer of hope, fragile yet persistent, began to awaken within Lily. She started to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, the universe was finally offering them a much-needed reprieve. This anonymous generosity, though unexplained, renewed her faith in the inherent goodness of people, a faith she always held, but which had been severely tested by life's harsh realities. As these financial pressures eased, freeing up some of Lily's emotional bandwidth, James felt it was time to step out of the shadows, albeit cautiously. He yearned to connect with the woman he had watched with such admiration, to understand her beyond the lens of her struggles. He orchestrated a chance encounter at a local park, a place he knew Lily frequented during her rare moments of downtime. He positioned himself on a bench, engrossed in a book, timing his presence with her usual afternoon stroll. When she walked by, he looked up, offering a polite, almost shy smile. "Excuse me," he began, feigning unfamiliarity. "I couldn't help but notice you often sit here. It's a peaceful spot, isn't it?" Lily, initially reserved, returned his smile. They struck up a conversation, an easy, unforced dialogue that surprised James with its immediate depth. He introduced himself simply as James, omitting any mention of his surname or his family's vast empire. He pretended to be a freelance architect, a plausible cover that allowed him to express interest in creativity and design, areas he knew Lily had a latent passion for. During their talks, he learned about her dreams. Not grand ambitions of wealth, but simple, profound desires. To see her mother healthy, to have the financial security to pursue her love for art, to perhaps one day have a small studio where she could paint. He discovered her nuanced perspective on life, her resilience, and her profound ability to find joy in small moments despite her circumstances. He listened intently as she spoke of her mother, the love in her voice palpable, painting a picture of a woman whose courage she drew strength from. James found himself increasingly drawn to Lily's genuine nature, her unwavering optimism despite the hardships she faced. Her laughter was infectious, her insights thoughtful, and her spirit unburdened by cynicism. She possessed an inner beauty that transcended physical appearance, a warmth that radiated from her core. He saw in her not only kindness and compassion, but also an fierce intelligence, a quiet wisdom gained from navigating the complexities of a life far removed from his own privileged existence. He began to fall for her, recognizing a beauty far beyond the superficiality that characterized so much of his world. Each conversation, each shared moment, solidified his growing affection, pulling him deeper into a connection he hadn't known he craved. He realized that this was different from anything he had ever experienced. There was no pretense, no expectation, just raw, honest human connection. He found himself looking forward to their chance meetings with an eagerness he hadn't felt in years, counting the hours until he could see her smile, hear her voice, and simply be in her presence. He felt a sense of peace and belonging that had eluded him in the opulent but often empty halls of his own life. The subtle interventions James had orchestrated created a fragile space for Lily, a brief respite from the relentless pressure. The mysterious payments on her rent and some of her mother's initial medical costs had indeed provided a much-needed breathing room, enough for her to catch her breath, but not enough to erase the fundamental precarity of her situation. It was within this delicate window that their chance encounters in the park began to blossom. What started as polite, almost hesitant conversations about the weather or the local happenings slowly evolved into something much deeper. They discovered shared interests, a love for classic literature, a quiet appreciation for the hidden beauty in everyday city life, a mutual fascination with the way light played on different surfaces. Lily spoke of her dreams, her half-finished sketches, her longing to pursue art beyond the confines of her limited free time. James, carefully crafting an identity as a freelance writer, listened intently, his heart swelling with a mixture of affection and a growing sense of unease. He found himself captivated by her perspective, her ability to find beauty and strength in circumstances that would crush most. Her laughter was light and genuine, a stark contrast to the forced mirth he often encountered. He saw the world through her eyes, a world vibrant with challenges but also rich with small, everyday joys. As days turned into weeks, their friendship deepened into a profound connection. They spent afternoons walking through botanical gardens, talking for hours over coffee at small, independent cafes, or simply sitting in comfortable silence, watching the world go by. Lily, completely unaware of his family's immense wealth, saw James as a kind, intelligent, and unusually attentive man. She felt cherished, genuinely seen, in a way she hadn't experienced before. She confided in him about her mother's health, about the weight of her responsibilities, and about her secret ambition to one day paint professional portraits. James, in turn, shared carefully curated details about his freelance writing career, his imagined struggles, and his desire to make a meaningful impact on the world. The deception gnawed at him, a constant, underlying thrum of guilt, but the fear of losing what they had, of shattering the fragile trust they were building, kept him silent. He wanted her to love the man he was pretending to be, the man who listened and understood, not the heir to a fortune. He yearned for an authentic connection, one untainted by the shadow of his family name and the vast chasm of their economic disparities. This was the biggest internal conflict he had ever faced, wrestling with the desire for truth against the desperate need for genuine acceptance. Every shared smile, every heartfelt confession from Lily, tightened the knot of his secret, making the eventual revelation seem more daunting yet inevitable. However, the quiet respite provided by James's initial, subtle interventions was never meant to last indefinitely. Life, in its relentless march, brought new challenges. Lily's mother, despite the initial stabilization, experienced a worrying downturn. Her chronic condition, always lurking beneath the surface, flared with renewed intensity, demanding more specialized care and, consequently, more expensive medication and consultations. The fragile financial equilibrium Lily had momentarily experienced began to crumble under the renewed onslaught of bills. The medical statements that arrived in the mail were no longer just worrying, they were terrifying. The numbers on the page seemed to mock her tireless efforts, escalating far beyond what her maid's salary, even supplemented by the anonymous aid, could ever hope to cover. The stress began to show on Lily, an almost imperceptible tightening around her eyes, a slight tremor in her hands when she thought no one was looking, a return to the weary slump in her shoulders that James had first noticed. The late-night phone calls she received from the hospital, the hushed conversations she had with doctors, all contributed to a growing sense of desperation that James could not ignore. She tried to hide it from him, maintaining her bright demeanor during their outings, but he saw through the facade. He saw the moments when her gaze would drift, lost in thought, the faint tremor in her voice when discussing her mother's future, the way she would unconsciously clench her jaw. He watched as her optimism, once so radiant, slowly dimmed under the harsh reality of her circumstances. James's concern escalated from a quiet worry to a raging internal tempest. The carefully constructed wall of his secret began to feel less like a protective barrier and more like a suffocating cage. He had wanted to earn her affection, to build a relationship based on something real, but his silence was now actively causing her pain. He saw her growing despair, the return of the sleepless nights, the increasing instances of her picking up extra shifts, pushing herself to the brink of exhaustion. The paradox was agonizing. He held the power to alleviate every single one of her burdens, yet his fear of losing her, of her seeing him only for his money, held him captive. He replayed that first night in the diner over and over in his mind, the simple, selfless act of a woman who gave her last $5. How could he, the recipient of such pure generosity, stand by and watch her suffer when he possessed the means to end it all? The guilt became unbearable, a heavy cloak that smothered his joy in their deepening connection. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that he could not keep his secret much longer. The risk of shattering her trust, of her feeling betrayed by his prolonged deception, suddenly paled in comparison to the agony of watching her carry this impossible weight alone. He had to act, and soon, before the weight of her struggles consumed her entirely. The truth, however difficult, was becoming their only path forward. The weight of the world seemed to crash down upon Lily in an instant, a suffocating blanket woven from fear and desperation. The hushed, sympathetic tones of Dr. Evans echoed in her memory, each word a chilling pronouncement. Her mother's condition had taken a sudden, alarming turn for the worse. The new prognosis was grim. Without a highly specialized and incredibly expensive surgery, her chances of recovery plummeted. Lily clutched the crumpled medical report in her trembling hands, the figures blurring through her unshed tears. This wasn't just a financial challenge anymore. It was a matter of life and death, an insurmountable mountain of medical debt threatening to swallow them whole. She felt utterly helpless, a small boat caught in a raging storm, with no paddle and no shore in sight. The anonymous acts of kindness, the paid rent, the vanished initial medical bills. They had been a lifeline, a glimmer of hope that someone, somewhere, cared. But this required a miracle beyond any anonymous benefactor. The cost of the procedure was staggering, well into 6 figures, far exceeding anything she could ever hope to earn, even with years of relentless work. Despair clawed at her heart, a cold, sharp talon. Across town, James received a frantic call from his private investigator, a man he had tasked with constantly monitoring Lily's situation. The news hit him like a physical blow. Lily's mother, critical surgery, imminent life-or-death decision. He paced his opulent study, the spacious room suddenly feeling like a cage. He had seen Lily just yesterday, her smile a little less bright, her eyes carrying a familiar, weary sadness he now understood. He had foolishly clung to his secret, believing he was protecting their burgeoning connection, preserving the fragile authenticity of their bond. But how could he have been so blind? His secrecy, born of good intentions, was now actively causing her pain, pushing her to the brink of utter devastation. He pictured her face, etched with worry, her shoulders bowed under a burden no one should bear alone. The thought of her mother, the woman Lily adored above all else, suffering, brought a pang of deep guilt. He had the power, the resources, to alleviate this agony, yet he had held back, caught in his own internal drama. The time for subtle interventions and carefully guarded secrets was over. The stakes were too high, the consequences too dire. He had seen the genuine kindness in her soul, felt the warmth of her spirit, and fallen deeply in love with the woman who saw him for himself, not his family name or his bank balance. He wanted her to love him without the shadow of his wealth looming over them. But true love, he realized, also meant fierce protection, unwavering support, and an absolute willingness to act when the person you loved was in desperate need. He took a deep, fortifying breath, the decision solidifying within him. He would reveal everything. The truth, no matter how jarring, was now their only path forward. He would face her anger, her confusion, her potential heartbreak for the chance to save her mother and, perhaps, their future together. He found Lily at her apartment, hunched over the kitchen table, the medical reports spread before her like an executioner's decree. Tears streamed silently down her face, glistening in the dim light. The sight pierced him to the core. He knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. She flinched, startled, then looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Lily," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I need to tell you something important." She looked at him, confused, her mind still reeling from her mother's prognosis. "James, what is it? I can't really think straight right now." He took a deep breath, marshaling his courage. "Lily, I know about your mother. I know about the surgery she needs." Her eyes widened in shock, a flicker of suspicion sparking through her grief. "How do you know?" she whispered, pulling back slightly. He squeezed her hand, trying to convey his sincerity. "Because I've been watching out for you, Lily, since that night at the diner." He paused, letting the words sink in. "My name isn't just James. My full name is James Sterling. My father owns Sterling Enterprises." The name hung in the air, a heavyweight that instantly altered the atmosphere in the small apartment. Sterling Enterprises, the multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, a name synonymous with unimaginable wealth and power across the nation. Lily stared at him, her mouth slightly agape, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling in her eyes. Disbelief, hurt, a dawning understanding that twisted her stomach into knots. And then, a dawning, terrifying gratitude. She tried to pull her hand away, but he held it gently, firmly. "I'm the one who paid your rent, Lily," he continued, his voice soft but unwavering. "I paid for your mother's initial medical bills. I've been trying to help anonymously because that night, seeing you, a stranger, give your last $5 to Alex, it changed something in me. I've never seen such pure kindness, such genuine selflessness. It was unlike anything I had ever witnessed in my world." He paused, allowing her to process the torrent of information. "I know this is a lot. I know it's a shock, and I'm so sorry for keeping it from you. I wanted you to know me, the real me, before my name, before my world got in the way. I was afraid you would see me only for my money, not for who I am. But I can't stand by and watch you suffer anymore. Your mother needs this surgery, and I can make sure she gets it, every single penny. And I will." Lily slowly withdrew her hand, her mind struggling to reconcile the gentle, unassuming man she had come to care for with the scion of one of the wealthiest families in America. The initial shock gave way to a wave of conflicting emotions. Betrayal, yes, for his deception, however well-intentioned. But then gratitude, immense and overwhelming, for the silent vigilance, the anonymous lifelines, the profound care he had shown. And beneath it all, a deep, unsettling confusion about everything she thought she knew about him, about their connection, about herself. He was a billionaire's son, and he had been watching her, helping her, loving her all this time. The world tilted on its axis. Lily stumbled backward, more from the weight of the revelation than any physical force. Her mind raced, sifting through every interaction, every shared laugh, every vulnerable moment they had experienced. Had it all been a charade? Was she merely a project for a bored billionaire's son? The questions burned, hot and acrid, in her throat. She looked at James, truly looked at him, and for the first time saw a hint of the immense power and privilege that lay beneath his carefully crafted normalcy. His earnest plea, his apologies, his explanation of fear, they all collided with the stark reality of his deception, no matter how kind his intentions. "Deception, James," she articulated, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You knew everything about me. My struggles, my mother's illness, my desperate financial situation. And you let me believe you were just James, a regular guy. How could you?" The hurt was palpable, a raw wound exposed. "Did you enjoy watching me struggle while you secretly pulled strings? Was it some kind of game to you, playing the anonymous benefactor?" Her voice cracked on the last word, the sting of betrayal sharp. James's face fell, etched with genuine remorse. He reached for her again, his touch hesitant. "No, Lily, never a game. I swear to you, it was never a game. The last thing I wanted to do was hurt you. Every intervention, every anonymous payment, it came from a place of genuine concern, of wanting to alleviate your burden without imposing myself or my world onto yours. I saw your kindness that night, that pure, unadulterated compassion you showed to Alex, even when you had nothing left for yourself. It was an anomaly in my experience, a beacon in a world I often found cold and transactional." He paused, searching her eyes for any glimmer of understanding. "I was drawn to that, Lily. To you. Your resilience, your strength, your unwavering spirit in the face of such adversity. I admired you more than anyone I had ever met. And when we started talking, when I got to know the incredible person you are, I became terrified. Terrified that if I revealed my name, my background, you would recoil. You would see the money, the empire, and not the man who genuinely respected and admired you. I wanted you to love me, for the connection we were building, not because of what my family name could offer." His voice was hoarse with emotion, his gaze unwavering. "I was a coward, Lily. I admit it. I should have told you sooner. But my intentions were always to protect you, to help you, and selfishly, to keep the genuine bond we were forming intact." Lily paced a small circle within the cramped living room, torn between her anger and the undeniable truth in his words. She remembered the moments of anonymous relief, the sudden ease of burdens that had nearly crushed her, the timely rent payments, the mysteriously covered medical bills. They had felt like miracles, like divine interventions when she had been at her lowest. And now she knew the source of those miracles. It was James, the man who had sat by her side, listened to her dreams, and gently, patiently won her heart. It was a dizzying realization, a complex tapestry of emotions weaving through her. "My mother," she finally said, her voice softer, the anger beginning to yield to a painful understanding. "Her surgery. You said you could help." James nodded instantly, his eyes filling with a desperate hope. "Yes, Lily, without question. I've already spoken to the best surgeons, discreetly, of course. We can arrange for her to have the procedure immediately, at no cost to you. And not just the surgery, but the best post-operative care, rehabilitation, anything she needs to make a full and complete recovery. I want to lift this burden from you, Lily. It's what I've wanted to do since the moment I first saw you." She looked at his outstretched hand, then into his pleading eyes. The sincerity radiating from him was undeniable. He wasn't just offering money, he was offering unwavering support, a lifeline in her darkest hour. She knew deep in her heart that despite the initial sting of his secret, his actions had consistently demonstrated a profound and selfless concern for her well-being. He had helped her when no one else could, when she felt utterly abandoned by fate. Slowly, tentatively, Lily reached out and took his hand, her fingers intertwined with his, a silent acknowledgement of the complex, winding path that had brought them to this moment. "James," she began, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. I can't say I'm not hurt. The deception, it cuts deep. But I also can't deny the good you've done, the way you've literally saved my family. I understand your fear, even if I don't fully condone the secrecy." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you. For everything. For my mother." A wave of palpable relief washed over James. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, holding her close, savoring the feeling of her acceptance. "Thank you, Lily," he whispered into her hair. "Thank you for seeing past my mistakes, for trusting me. I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life earning that trust." The next few days were a blur of activity, but this time it was a blur of hope, not despair. James, true to his word, orchestrated every detail of Mrs. Ramirez's care with seamless efficiency. She was transferred to a state-of-the-art facility, attended by a team of highly skilled specialists. The surgery, complex and daunting, was successfully performed, and the doctors reported a positive prognosis. The critical period of uncertainty began to recede, replaced by the steady, reassuring rhythm of recovery. Lily spent every possible moment at her mother's bedside, her heart overflowing with a gratitude that transcended words. The emotional burden, which had weighed her down for so long, finally lifted. Seeing her mother slowly but surely regaining her strength, the color returning to her cheeks, the light to her eyes, was the greatest gift James could have ever given her. During these long hours, James was often by her side, a quiet, supportive presence. Their conversations were deeper now, more honest, built on the raw vulnerability of their recent confrontation and the shared experience of hope. Lily saw him, not just as the billionaire's son, but as the kind, compassionate man who had seen her at her lowest and chosen to lift her up. Their relationship, forged in crisis and tempered by honesty, began to grow stronger, deeper, rooted in a foundation of mutual understanding and burgeoning love. The future, once a terrifying void, now shimmered with possibility. Lily's mother made a remarkable recovery, a testament to the swift and expert medical care she received, all orchestrated by James. The dark clouds of financial despair that had perpetually loomed over Lily's life finally dissipated, replaced by a clear, bright horizon. Their modest apartment, once a monument to struggle, became a home filled with laughter and peace. With her mother thriving and the specter of debt vanquished, Lily felt a freedom she had only ever dreamed of. It was James who gently encouraged her to finally pursue her long-shelved passion for art. He saw the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of charcoal sketches and oil paints, the quiet joy she found in creating beauty. With his unwavering support, she enrolled in a prestigious art school, trading her maid's uniform for an artist's smock, her daily grind for hours spent immersed in color and form. The transformation was profound, a physical manifestation of the boundless opportunities that had opened up before her. Their relationship, born from such an unusual confluence of circumstances, continued to flourish, deepening with each passing day. Lily and James built a life together that was rich in mutual respect, understanding, and an abiding love that transcended their vastly different backgrounds. Lily, despite her newfound comfort and opportunities, never forgot her humble beginnings. The memory of counting pennies, of making every dollar stretch, remained a potent reminder of the fragility of fortune and the enduring power of compassion. That simple act of kindness, handing her last $5 to a struggling waiter, had not only altered her own trajectory, but had inadvertently forged a bridge between two worlds. James, in turn, remained endlessly inspired by her grounded nature, her fierce independence, and the innate kindness that had first captivated him. He found in Lily a steadfast moral compass, a reminder that true wealth lay not in material possessions, but in character and human connection. Their shared journey led them to advocate for social causes, using their considerable resources to uplift others who faced similar struggles. They established a foundation dedicated to providing educational opportunities for underprivileged youth and medical assistance for families burdened by exorbitant healthcare costs. They remembered Alex, the waiter whose disheartened expression had triggered a chain of events, and often spoke of the profound ripple effect of even the smallest gesture. Lily's story became a beacon, a living testament to the idea that true generosity, untainted by expectation or reward, possesses an extraordinary power to transform lives. James, once a man adrift in a sea of privilege, found his purpose alongside her, his immense wealth channeled into meaningful change, driven by a woman who taught him the value of genuine empathy. Their lives together were a beautiful tapestry woven from shared dreams, unwavering support, and a commitment to making a positive difference in the world. They traveled, explored, and continued to grow, but always with a deep appreciation for the moment their paths had crossed, a moment sparked by a $5 bill. Lily's art flourished, her canvases often reflecting the poignant beauty of everyday life, the resilience of the human spirit, and the quiet dignity of those who persevered despite adversity. James often mused that the greatest fortune he ever acquired was not inherited, but rather found in the unassuming diner, observing a selfless act that forever altered his perspective. Their home, whether a sprawling estate or a cozy studio, was always filled with warmth, laughter, and the echoes of their incredible story. The narrative of Lily and James ultimately became a powerful message about the profound and often unseen impact of kindness. It underscored the importance of authenticity, urging people to look beyond superficial appearances and financial status to truly see the heart of another. Their journey served as a poignant reminder that true wealth resides not in bank accounts or luxury possessions, but in the richness of one's character, the depth of one's compassion, and the lasting connections forged through genuine human interaction. Lily, the maid's daughter, and James, the billionaire's son, proved that love, empathy, and a simple act of charity could bridge even the widest social divides, creating a legacy far grander than any inherited fortune. Their story resonated with the simple yet profound truth that a single act of kindness can set in motion an unstoppable wave of positive change, transforming not only the lives of those directly involved, but inspiring countless others to embrace the power of goodness. What do you think of Lily and James's incredible journey? Their story is a powerful reminder that kindness, however small, can create monumental shifts in destiny and illuminate the path to true happiness. Did Lily's initial act of generosity surprise you? How do you feel about James's decision to hide his identity, even with good intentions? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Your insights and opinions are incredibly valuable to us. Don't forget to hit that like button to show your support for stories that celebrate compassion and resilience. If you found this narrative inspiring, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another heartwarming and true-to-life tale. And for those seeking more narratives of courage, transformation, and unexpected twists of fate, click on the next video for another incredible story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, reminding us all that the human spirit is capable of boundless generosity and profound change.